Welcome back to Watch Talk. On today's video, we're going to be talking about a company I've never talked about, Grand Seiko. So this is not Seiko where we talk about the affordability of these watches. No, this is Grand Seiko. Most people, now they're getting more recognition, but most people out there, if you say Seiko to them, they'll say good quality, very low price, it's good value for money Seiko. Now, is that the case with their new Seiko 5 line and all their, $600 watches, which are very solid movements? Is it the same today? I believe so. I think they're very good quality watches for a lower price point. Grand Seiko is a different story. So Grand Seiko, there was two companies. I'm not going to get deeply in depth, but I want to give some substance to this. There was Grand Seiko and King Seiko. This was back during the Swiss trials. They wanted to build a watch that is better than the Swiss watches for a lower price point. So they built these companies completely in-house. They made their own. Then they entered the Swiss trials. I think it was 6th place, or 7th place, and then they came to 6th place, and then they went all the way up to 4. And I believe the top 3 or the top 2 was a quartz movement, a Swiss quartz movement. So they were beating all the Swiss automatic watches. And you know what Switzerland did? They canceled the trials. Grand Seiko canceled the Swiss trials. That's crazy. And nobody's heard of this company since recently, right? Then later on, they dismantled, they proved that they can beat the Swiss. So they actually stopped making watches, I believe in the 60s, maybe early 70s, they stopped. And then they waited a long time. They were developing this new thing called the spring drive movement. It took many, many decades, I believe, like 3 or 4 decades in the making. And they came out in 1996, I believe, in Japan, but they didn't make it overseas to the US till 2005. I'm pretty sure. So from 2005, they've been building their brand. The spring drive movement I just mentioned is the best movement in watchmaking ever, in my opinion. You're combining something that the automatic watch is not known for, quartz. You're putting a quartz piece into the movement, and you're not putting it on a battery where you would have to change it every 2 to 3 years. No. You're powering the quartz with your hand, and it's automatic. It's one of the most ingenious movements. There's many other videos on YouTube that go really, really into detail. I'm just trying to give a broad perspective because I want to talk about value in here. And this is just, it's like reality is not based in the watch world. And I'll tell you that because the value in a bit, but let's just talk about the movement for just a second. So I said, yes, it's a quartz in there with a regulator. So it will tell if you're going fast or slow. You move your hand, powers the line to the quartz, but it's automatic, so it ticks all the way around. It's the most ingenious thing you can ever think of. Grand Seiko, how they've done it. They've used little pieces like lens. What you're watching me on now, like the lens zoomers, is very, very cool. There's so much detail in it. And I can make a 20-minute video just talking about the movement because, man, it is gorgeous. But now, then we look, across the world at Switzerland, right? Nobody really, if you're not a watch guy, you're not going to go out and say, oh, that's Grand Seiko, that's a beautiful piece. No, people want to buy a watch that is known and has value over time. If somebody walked up to you and said, buy this watch for $50,000, maybe in a year it's worth $5,000, like Hublot, nobody would do it. That's not how it works. And that's why you see Hublot not, they sell at retail to people that don't know, but the watch enthusiast doesn't like Hublot. But this is the opposite. Rolex, they're great, right? I'm a huge fan of Rolex. I want my first piece of Rolex I'm saving for right now. I'm saving for a Rolex. And I realized with Rolex that it's great. It's in-house, right? It has brand recognition since 1908, over 100 years, right? So when we think about heritage and history, Rolex is there. They have, they're in-house. Grand Seiko is too. But let's take a minute at Seiko. They've been around since the 1800s. They have done so many achievements and complications and their new the spring drive. You know, Rolex sits there and they have their movements. They're safe with their movements. They have new designs, but you notice with their movements hasn't really changed. Even the last date just, you know, movement is basically the same as the 3135, I believe. I believe that's their new movement and their date just. More recently in the 80s, I think they switched over. They've had the same movement since the 80s. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's chronometer certified, 2 seconds a day. Beautiful piece. But then we look at Grand Seiko around $5. You can $5,000. Not $5. $5,000. You can go and get a 1 second a day watch. It's never heard of. The way they've done it is never heard of in the history of watches. You know, it's something that's new technology. You know, that's innovative. Rolex doesn't have to be innovative. They don't have to come up with new models. They're great as their own. You know, who needs to change the day just? I think if they change it, it won't be a success. No, I think they're two brands, very separated. But with Seiko, do you think it should be losing from retail? Because they are. They're losing from retail. You're not going to go out buy a Grand Seiko watch from the boutique and you spend on it. You're not going to go flip it and make a couple grand. No, it's understandable. You know, a watch enthusiast would like it. But if somebody's buying it and they're losing a couple grand, they might be upset. You want to break even on a watch. I don't think you should really look, if you have enough money where you don't really care that much and you just want a watch that is beautiful, that's innovative, and I think it's the best value for money. Like, honestly, even from the boutique, I think it's a great value. Then go with Grand Seiko because they have a more accurate movement than Rolex. It's a fact. I'm telling facts. I don't like saying that because I want a Rolex. I like, not because of the brand recognition. I have to say that because I like a Rolex because of the heritage of a Rolex. If you think about Rolex, they've been around since 1908, but their achievements are just amazing. If we look at it, they've had Winston Churchill wear the original date just, you know, in 1945. They've had these great leaders, people that first conquered Mount Everest were wearing their watches. Across the whole world, they're well known. Seiko is too. I hope everybody should know what Grand Seiko is and Seiko because it's just an amazing story. I'm going to say it's as amazing as Rolex. It's in their own way, you know. They don't have the marketing like Rolex. I found this out, a watchmaker told me, I don't know if this is 100% true, but Rolex makes less than 2% of the watches in the world. 2%. But they take up 53% of the global money of watches, you know, spent every year. I couldn't believe that, right? Because I'm thinking about, you know, Vacheron Constantin and Patek Philippe. I don't think they're counting those. I think they're just counting it as retail, which would Rolex win. And it's a sad fact, but it's a fact, you know. You can't always make money in this world. It's always, you buy it because you love it. And that's what I have to say to everybody. But when I say you buy it because you love it, you also have to enjoy things. And people's mind change all the time. I can tell you that, I'm saving up for a Rolex, right? Maybe I don't like that Rolex in a year. With a Rolex, I can sell it guaranteed I can make my money back if I buy it at a good price. I'm saying if you buy it at a good price. Now, if I go out and buy a Grand Seiko, right? I wear it for a year. I like it. You know, I'm sick of the watch. I want to sell it. And I want to make my money back at least, right? I go try to sell it. I'll lose two grand. Let's say 2 grand. That 2 grand's gone forever. I'm not going to get that money back, right? So that's the sacrifice. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for this little rant about, you know, companies. This was more about Grand Seiko, but I wanted to lean into all the other companies. The next video, I'm going to be sharing with you more about the Richard Mille of the world, you know, Richard Mille watches. I'll talk about them. I'll talk about why I think they're going to crash and how trends change. Thanks so much. Hit that like button. Smash it, actually. Smash that like button. Subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.